Welcome to this special broadcast. We're coming to you from the 4th floor of City Hall in Belleville. This is the Council Chambers. I'm Councillor Sean Kelly in conversation with Wilbert Maracle from TruthandRec. Wilbert just recently turned 90 years young, still very active, and we're looking forward to our conversation with Wilbert. Good to see you. You're looking well.
Thank you.
Your 90th birthday, you're still very active. You're farming, you're dancing, you're bowling. How do you keep it going?
Well, I got really something special to tell you. And when I turned 75, I went to a super senior bowling. So I went to London and I qualified. I won All Ontario. And I went to Reno, Nevada, represent, and I blew the muscle in my arm, and I bowled 9 games with two-handed, and I came in 4th. 42 Americans and 5 Canadians, and I came in 4th. So every time I was so brave in a way, I saw my name, the muscle broke off my arm, and I went down there, and it hurt so bad that I couldn't pick the ball up. I couldn't pick the ball up at all, so I rolled it over in my left hand, and I walked up within 2 feet of the foul line, and I two-handed it down, and I got a strike. And I still bowl. I bowl Monday, Tuesday, and Thursdays, and I play pool on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And I farm. I got Charolais cattle, and I have a horse that she's 25 years old, and with my personality and animals, I correspond real well. So mainly this is about when I was little, I farmed. I had no father. And I had a little house back on a slash road, my mother had, and that was way off the road, and I never started school till I was 7 years old.
You've lived an interesting life, Wilbur, and 150,000 Indigenous children were taken from their families where they lived and sent to government and church-run residential schools. And you're going to kind of share your story when you were younger. What do you remember? Leaving home and going to residential school?
John, I remember everything. I remember walking down the road. My mother told me about this school. And I says, Ma, I always call her Ma. I said, Ma, you'll never get me there. Never. And my brother was 9 years older than I am, and his father was from Oswego. And she said, it's in the hospital in Oswego, so we'll go and visit him. So I said, I thought that was pretty good, my brother and I, but she lied to me. And we went down, caught the bus on the slash road, and we went to Brantford. And when we got to Brantford, it was dark. And this was on the 9th of November in 1943. And she said, we'll stay here for the night. So I said, okay. So the boys' master, he opened the door, and there was 2 beds in there. And my brother, we slept there. The next morning, I woke up, and the boys' master come in and said, okay, boys, get up, dress. I said, where's my mother? She said, he's gone. She's gone, and you got to stay here. And she lied to me. That's what I said. I had a hold of Johnny's hand. He was crying, and I was crying too. I said, she lied to me. We were supposed to go see my brother in Oswego. And we were there 2 years, friends on the reserve. Didn't know where I was for 2 years. Kids went to school, my friends and that. There's my friend right on that picture there. And he said, we never knew where he was.
So we have the picture here. Wilbur was kind enough to bring in some photos.
This is my friend right here. We've been friends. He's 91, and him and I grew up. They're like brothers. The whole family.
So your friend, when you left home and taken to the residential school in the Brampton area,
yeah,
he had no idea. He just vanished in the middle of the night kind of thing?
Yeah, just didn't know where I was for 2 years. She never told anybody that she had dumped us in Brantford. And another thing, I mean, I hate to say it, but I hated my mother for 50 years. I hated her. I have no education. And Brantford, they always lie. Because the thing is, they said that the kids go to that school to get an education and do things. They only went to school half a day, and you had to work the other half a day. I was only 8 years old, but I was a farmer when I went there. My job, 4 years old, was to fill the wood box at home. I had a runaway with horses when I was 7 years old, raking hay. I've been a farmer all my life.
So what do you remember, Wilbert, about the school? You were young, your mom leaves, you're there with your brother, you're there for 2 years. What do you remember? Do you think of what went on? You said you studied for half a day?
Well, we went to school half a day. I'll finish when I got there. I'll go back to when I got up and asked my mother, the boys' master. So he said, okay, we'll go down for lunch, breakfast. So we went down, and he took us into the dining hall, and he said, you two sit here. There was 2 slices of bread and a little bowl of porridge, 3/4 full in this little bowl, and a glass of milk. And he says, well, you have breakfast. So the boys all come in, and they all sat down. Then I saw a big boy took 2 slices of bread off of that one off the table, and he put it in we had bib overalls right there. You could see that's just right when I come out of the school.
It's that photo right there.
Bib overall, yeah.
So your grandmother said that you were a man so young.
Yeah, my actions and my wood.
Responsibilities for yourself. Just think of what you had at that age.
Yeah.
7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And how old were you in this picture with your mother?
Right, 13.
You were 13 years old.
And my brother was 11. This was an Aldershot, and I got a story on it. So when I saw the boy take bread, the boys were very hateful. They were abusive, a lot of them abusive, and they called me a sissy. And after we went out, then we ate, and then we went out, and there was just boys. There was no man out there, to look. The boys matter, but maybe there was 35, 40 boys, and there was no boys master, no man around. And then they come and hit me. Well, we're standing there crying. My brother and I were strangers in the place, and I had to look after my brother. And they hit me, and it was about 6 weeks this went on. We cried, I don't know how many times. And before I went to that school, I don't ever remember crying at home. My mother said, why don't I talk Mohawk? Well, we weren't allowed to talk Mohawk. My brother that was in Oswego, he talked all Mohawk, and then when he went to school, he couldn't talk English very good, and he wasn't allowed to talk Mohawk at the school, and the teacher was a Mohawk that he wasn't allowed to talk to the kids in Mohawk.
So you were forbidden to speak the language that you were raised on, and they were taking away your culture.
Yeah, yep. It's true.
So they were removing this from you.
Yeah. So anyway, I put up with it, and a boy about a foot higher than I was, and he's 12 years old, he hit me, and then he laughed, walked away, and I ran, and I jumped up on his back, and I put my arm around it, and I just kept putting it right to him. And two boys, big boys, had to take me off of him, and because I was angry, and I don't get mad, and I put it right to him. And then when the boys got me off, he walked over and he looked at me, and he said to them boys, he says, "Holy man, he's strong." Well, I was a farmer. I worked at home. I fed pigs and carried water, and I did everything. I didn't hay. I cut hay with the horses, and I raked hay. And when I had raking hay, a rabbit jumped up in front of me, and the horses jumped, and I was standing on the rake on this against the seat, and when they jumped, I fell off, and I rolled in the rake, and I have a mark on my leg where one of the teeth hit me, and the horses ran away. And my brother, he was only 5 years old, and he went out and he was, whoa, and the horses stopped for him.
Do you remember any of your classmates? Do you remember any of the teachers from the residential school?
I'll come to that.
Okay.
So after that, when I tackled that boy and got him off, boys didn't bother me no more. But they were bothering my brother. And I told him, I said, "Don't you be bothering my brother." I said, "He's so little and that." And I said, "Don't be bothering him." And then there was Bob Smart from our reserve was there, and I made friends with him. And his sister was in the other part. Two of his sisters was in the other part. And his two brothers, they were two brothers. And we became friends in that. So when I turned, and this was in November, and in about February, I went and I helped. I made a friend from a guy, Kenny, and I went to the barn with him, and I helped clean barn. And the boss come over, the guy looking, he was Mr. Bigot. I see how my memory is. I know the name Mr. Bigot. He was quite an old man, about 60. He was about 62, you know, but he looked older, you know. Mm-hmm. And there was boys. They were milking about 38 cows, and so the boy I was with, he's 2 years older than I was, and he was milking, and he said to me, "Can you milk?" And I walked over and got a pail, and I put about that much in, and you had to weigh the milk, so I poured it in the pail, and another boy, older boy, he carried it and weighed it, because all the cows were purebred, so they weighed all the milk. So Mr. Bigot come over and couldn't believe I was just a little guy and I could milk cows and I knew everything about cows. Well, I have no father. I had my mother, my brother, and we lived, she had everything, chickens, geese, ducks, everything, and pigs and 3 cows and a team of horses. And the horses were only 3 and 4, no, they were only 2 and 3 years old. They were just colts. And she traded vegetables for the horses. That's how she got the horses. So at the school, the summer come, and I had to, then Mr. Bigot trusted me with 35 cows, and we had to get the cows out, take them out of the barn, and then you go down the lane, and then all the way along, about, must have been 700-800 feet. We had to go in the lane, and then you had to come to the street in Brantford, coming to the street, and there was nothing on the east side. But the west side, all the street people call houses there, and Mr. Bigot lived in one of the houses, eh? So you had to drive them about a mile from that. And then the little church, little chapel, there was a little chapel in the Grand River, and up in a graveyard there, and the pasture was in the Grand River area, and 35 cows. And I looked after them. I would go in the morning, never had a clock. I was a cowboy. I would go in the morning and get them cows, and I had to walk. It was a good over a mile. I had to walk down, and then I had to sit up on a post and count the cows, make sure I had them all. Sometimes it was foggy. And another thing that would really hurt me really bad now, even now, was mourning doves. You would hear the mourning doves, and the cows, I would holler for the cows, and they would all come up. Then I'd have to sit up on a post and count them, see if I got them all. And then I'd drive them all. They had to cross the road, and they'd get in a ditch, and then they'd all go in the road. They wouldn't get off the road. They'd stay right on the road and go down the lane up into the barn, and they'd go right up in their own stalls and that. And in the fall, when them little boy guys, I always tried to provide for them. I would take a bag and go in the orchard and pick up windfalls, and I would put them, and all the little, about 25 of them, I'd all give them all an apple. I would go pick apples, and I wasn't supposed to, but I like.
You did it.
I did it.
How did you get away from the residential school? I'd like you to share that story, because it's talk about resilience and strength at such a young age.
The farmers, there's a lot of farmers that grow vegetables, eh? Like carrots and cabbage and everything, all in a row. So they would come to the school in a truck, and they would get about, maybe sometimes they'd only want 5 boys, or, and I was always first one. I was always the first one they would pick. And I'd be just standing there, and they could tell that I was interested.
A worker. Yeah.
And I would go and ride. And then this kind of commandment that I made friends with the older guy. We used to go cut grass, push mower, and then we'd trim around with the brush snips, say, and we'd trim around, and the ladies would maybe give us 50 cents. They were old ladies, so we were cutting grass, and on the 8th of June, I had 65 cents, and I said to my brother, I said, Johnny, I said, don't say anything, but I'm going to run away. I said, I'm getting us out of here. And I was 12 years old, because my birthday was on the 21st of June. I was 12 years old. So I went into the store on this side of Brantford, in a little community there, and went in this little store. And the lady said, Wilbert, what do you need today? I said, I need fish hooks, fish line, and matches. She looks at me and she says, you going camping? It sounds like you're going camping. I says, I am. So I went to the dump just down about a mile from the school. And there was a dump there, and I went there, and I found a blanket and a coat. And I went in the woods, and I camped for 3 weeks. And then I decided, and the bread man, I always bought bread man, because when taking the cows down the path to the bread man, he was in a horse and buggy, like that, Bob. And I would buy a loaf of bread off of him, and he would give me a package of cookies, 5 cents. This bread that was day old, eh? And I camped there. So finally, I thought to myself, I better head down. So I walked. I hit down the highway and I walked, and it's 50 miles from Brantford to Aldershot. It's 50 miles. So I got about halfway, and it was kind of cloudy, so there was a bunch of pines there. And I went and got some cardboard, and I got pine, and I made a bed. That's why if it rained, I didn't get wet. Mm-hmm. That's how I camped for 3 weeks. And so then I walked down, I got down to Aldershot, and there was a picnic table there, and there was a native guy sitting on the picnic table. And I said to him, "Excuse me," I said, "Do you know Susie Maracle?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." She said, "I'll go try phone her." And then I thought, "Oh yeah." So about 10 minutes later, all of a sudden the sheriff car had sheriff on the side come up. "Where are you from?" I said, "Tynega." He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Tynega." He said, "How are you going to get there?" I said, "Same way I got here. I walked." "From where?" I said, "Brantford." I said, I promised myself not to lie. I said, "I'll come from Brantford. I ran away from the school, the Mohawk Institution." So he went into a garage and he phoned the school. And then he come back and he says, "Wilbert," he says, "the principal can't come and get you. This is on a Saturday." He says, "Principal can't come and get you because he's too busy." And he said, "I can't take you to Brantford." So he said, "But I have a native friend that's from Montreal, the reserve from Montreal." He says, "I have a native friend. We play cards together." He says, "No, actually," he says, "I even play with your mother and my aunt and my mother." So he asked the guy, he says, "Can Wilbert stay here all night?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And the policeman, he looked at me and he says, "Will you stay with him?" And I looked at the guy, and then I looked at the policeman, and he's big as you are. Looked at the policeman, and he says, "If you don't, I got to put you in jail." Oh, say, I went like that. I says, too bad. I said, "I was already in jail for 4 years. I been 40 years." And I said, "Yeah, I'll stay with him," because he was a Mohawk, you know, and he was friendly, and I was friendly with him, polite, you know, like I'm really polite. And so the principal come and got me 10 o'clock next morning on Sunday, took me up in his office, got the strap out. He had a strap this long, 4 inches wide, and it had a handle on it. You put it over your hand, and he says, "Wilbert, hold out your hand." I held out my hand like that, and he took a swing, and I pulled my hand back and hit his leg, just like that. And he grabbed my hand, and he thought it was going to go this way, and I went that way, and he hit it there. And I come right with this hand right into his tummy. And he had a tummy, and I hit him right there. And I said, "You're not hitting me." "No, you're not hitting me." He says, I got to do it. He says, I said, "It's already done. It's already happened." Like I was like an adult. I said, "It's already happened." I said, "If you touch me," I said, "you won't walk." So we got my mother and my aunt. My aunt came she had a Model A coupe with a rumble seat in it, you know. And my 2 cousins were there, Wilbert Maracle and Shirley Maracle. And so my mother, Aunt Sari, they come at 11 o'clock the next day after the principal tried to give me a strapping. And then we rode down to Aldershot. And my mother had a little house working on the farm. She lived in a little house upstairs in it, you know, 2-bedroom. She slept downstairs in the bedroom, and we slept upstairs. So she had to work. She was working on the farm, and she went to work on Tuesday morning, and I went down, and I was standing there, and my brother, he was standing way back. And the boss looked at me, says, "What can I do for you?" I said, "I want a job." He looks at me, you're pretty tiny. He said, what can you do? I said, I can do anything you can do. I got this
Gift.
I can do anything. I'm a carpenter, I'm a welder, I've built 2 houses by myself. I've wired them and I've put plumbing in them. I've done everything. And I went to the States. I'm a certified welder here in Canada and the States. I'm a certified welder.
Our guest, Wilbert Maracle. We're here at City Hall Chambers in Belleville. Thank you so much, Wilbert. Thank you.
For a 90-year-old.
Did really well. Thank you.